Can everybody hear me? Great. Jeff Spiritos. I've been in the development business for coming on 40 years. Started with all the traditional building types. Spent 25 years with Hines, which is an international developer, and then the last 13 years with our own firm. But before I get started with the presentation, I want to start with a couple acknowledgments. And to Craig Rawlings first, and to Bill Parsons of WoodWorks. I think you guys have done a tremendous job putting this conference together. The group of experts, the spectrum of participants is exceptional. And I think that at the end of this conference, when the word gets out, it's going to be known that Portland is the new Garmisch. I also want to thank the sponsors of the Tall Wood competition that are one of the reasons that I'm here. This is Tom Vilsack of the USDA, Patrick Holmes, USDA, Steve Lovett and Mark Brinkmeyer of the Softwood Lumber Board, and Kasta Jagger. And then finally, Oscar Farrow, without whom the whole competition process wouldn't have happened. And I think as time goes on and tall buildings become more and more common in the United States, and if you don't believe that, I know you all believe that because it's going to happen. These individuals are going to, and Case is not going to like it when I say this, but these people are going to be known as the forefathers of the tall wood building industry, because it's their initiatives that really got the ball rolling. So first I want to start with, let me do this. I can just close this up probably, right? How do I close that? Okay. I want to ask for a show of hands. Who in this auditorium is a developer? 1, 2, not many. Who wants to be a developer? Even fewer. Okay, that's not the right answer, but who works with a developer? Okay, there's a lot more there. So thank you, Cheryl. The idea is that if you want to be involved in this business, you have to be ready to make a big commitment to the process for building tall timber buildings. I'm not talking about what Noel's doing, which is incredible, and he's really doing, you can tell it from what he's doing. It's very meaningful work. It's very, it's profitable work, and it has a real case for being. But when you build tall buildings, you have all these uncertainties. And the public is unaware. We've talked about all of this, the speakers before me in this conference, but the public lack of awareness, the government concerns and issues in getting approvals, the uncertainty of costs, although I think we've all learned right here new ways to look at costs, and I'll get into it in a later slide. But upon first blush, people say, well, it can't compete with concrete and steel, so that's got to be overcome. The market risk is very visible because of user unfamiliarity. And that leads into the last one, which is the technology in the long term. We don't have in the world, since tall timber buildings have only started in 2008, a 10-year and a 20-year history to be able to look back on performance and see that these buildings have held up over time. But that's going to happen. And so what you have to do as a developer is to ask yourself to reflect. What are you motivated by? How much do you really care about the environment? And an important piece for everybody to realize is that timber structures really complete the picture of what a healthy building is. Because we've been focused for a number of years on reducing energy consumption or reusing resources or healthy building materials. But by building in concrete and steel, the bones, the skeleton of a building were not healthy. And now with timber, it completes the picture and the entire building can be healthy. And it allows us to really dial forward into how we can create zero energy or net zero buildings. That's going to happen more now with timber. So what you have to do, 90% of the developers, I was talking to somebody before, are really interested in the bottom line. And not a lot of them are interested in architecture. Not a lot of them, as Noel is, are interested in enhancing the built environment or what the community really wants. So if you're trying to convince those developers to participate here, or you are a developer that cares, you really need to dedicate your effort to learn this industry, to learn the science, to learn the research, to learn the production, to learn the strengths and the weaknesses, and all the technology. And in that way, you really build a foundation that you can spring from in being truly committed to this building type. You don't give up. Noel said that. Just keep pushing on. And the resources are out there. We've talked about them. We've heard from them. Get to know them. They really want to share. As Michael Green said, this is an industry of people who fundamentally care about the same thing. And that shines through all the relationships that you'll have. And people will answer your question. They will share information that in other sectors of development, people would say, I need the competitive advantage. I'm not going to share that information. This is because it comes from nature, because it comes from a care for the environment. This is a truly different group of individuals in this industry. So I think one thing that I'd like to propose and for us to think about is to establish a network of developers across the country that can support each other to make this industry grow. And this was not my idea. In fact, I wouldn't be up here if it weren't for another person that I'd like to acknowledge, which is my daughter, Erica, who from a very young age had a very deep care for nature and the environment. And while I cared about building meaningful buildings, I couldn't connect the dots until I listened to her and the idea of getting into the timber building business really materialized. So Erica, where are you? I want to thank you. So the judgments that developers must make are affordability, we know it can be accomplished. Deliverability is uncertain. There are not many builders in the United States that can deliver timber buildings. That still has to be solved. Marketability, Noel's showing us, Michael Green is showing us. I think the days are quickly behind us that you can't prove to a user that it's desirable to be in a timber building, a tall timber building. Insurability, well, we've heard from Robert of Equilibrium how you can really communicate to insurers that it's really better for them to insure a timber building than it is to insure the traditional buildings. Financeability, that still has to be overcome when you're talking about tall timber buildings. How do you get that sector, your capital partners, to support the inherent risks or the perceptive risks of this building type? And dependability, again, is important to invest in systems that will monitor and maintain and allow you to assess the performance, whether it's moisture or it's movement or it's acoustical, the actual properties that timber has, so that you can build a bank of information for the next generation of projects and know how to do it better. You've got to be able to monitor it to do that. I'm not going to spend time on this slide. I hope you'll read a couple of the things, but all of this stuff has been talked about already. I will focus on the fourth point of design, about the necessity of committing to coordination up front and three-dimensional modeling. You can't build timber buildings the way you build traditional buildings. There's no chances to go back and fix the issues after the material has been delivered to the job. So make the commitment up front. And as the folks who've talked about the beauty of putting a structure together, once you've coordinated it and then the way the pieces fit together, the benefits on your construction schedule are going to be immense. Procurement's very interesting because there are much different ways. There are, I'm going to say, 10 or so producers that you can go to. I may be wrong. It may be 15. We visited a lot of them. The ones in the United States are really starting to get up and running right now. There are more in Canada and even more in Europe, as we know. But how to get a dependable single point of responsibility of delivering a tall timber structure requires a lot of work and challenge, and it's not been proven it can happen, but it's one of those big investments that people have to make. The contractor side, we all know that the crews are small. If you've got a timber building experience, that's going to give you a leg up on doing it. Guys like Nick Millstone, for example, will transfer that technology, and John Boyce, who's not here, will transfer that technology from Europe or north of the border to the US, and these buildings will be built effectively. And Chris does it effectively already on the East Coast with Benson Wood. Maintenance, I've kind of talked about. Regulatory issues. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've all heard about the technical issues, but what I want to say are the things at the bottom, which is that the char rates are consistent and predictable and will make building department officials comfortable with the fire resistance ratings. That delamination, which is a concern of fire departments and building departments, will not be an issue because that can be overcome through the information that's available from prior testing. That successful fire testing of loaded assemblies can be achieved, that there are facilities out there and we can prove to the code officials that concealed connectors will survive under load in an assembled condition. And that all suppliers should be considered when you're thinking about buying your timber frame. You could take the easy route and go to one or two who are most proximate to you, but I think for the betterment of cost competitiveness and really gaining product knowledge, I would recommend to everybody to learn about all the capability that's out there, make that investment, and engage everybody in your pricing exercise, and then make your decision. So cost considerations, how much time do I have left? Like -1 minute? That much time, oh my gosh. Okay. I'm doing okay then. So I think this is the slide I want to spend the most time on, because actually comparing concrete and steel and timber buildings is not about just comparing their structure. It's comparing the other related systems, the cost of those in those three systems. We've heard that concrete weighs a lot more than timber. We've heard that the steel weighs a lot more than timber. And Eric is going to correct my numbers after the presentation, so I appreciate that. So I'm not going to be exactly right in this stuff, even though I'm a structural engineer. As my friend Oscar Farrow says, on a scale of 1 to 10 in learning the timber business, we think we've maybe gotten from 2 to 3. That just shows how much more there is to learn and how exciting it is to be learning it. But there are savings in the foundations. Nick Milestone told us about that. We know about the savings. I think the cost of putting in place a concrete frame versus a steel frame versus a timber frame, I think right now, actually, I'm talking East Coast urban costs, they're really not that much different from each other. And if you're starting out on a basis where they're all pretty comparable, you can only get better from there. So when you put in the floors, the pace of putting in your timber floors is exceptional. You don't have to follow on as you would in a steel building with concrete and with fireproofing. For acoustics, you'll probably put in a concrete topping above an acoustical layer, but that goes down quickly and can dry in a day. So your CLT behaves as your shear walls, and your material is self-protecting. It doesn't have to be fireproofed. Instead of building a concrete masonry unit or a heavy structural stud exterior wall or elevator and stair walls, it's already in place with your CLT. All you have to do is fire safe it. That saves time and money. And in these office buildings, rather than closing them up to cover the fireproofing and cover those mechanicals, for the types of users that want to be in these buildings and the natural beauty of wood, you're going to leave it exposed, and you're going to save that money on acoustical ceiling or drywall. We touched on a lot of these things at the bottom in all the prior talks. The crew size is smaller. The prefabrication speeds up the process. The dimensional reliability is incredible, obviously. Concrete, we know, is put in place out of tolerance. Steel has to be adjusted. Does the camber come out or does it not come out? And what do you do in the aftermath to get your floors level if you're not putting in a raised floor? You don't have to deal with any of that stuff. Once your slab on grade is level and it's square, the rest of the building is just going to fall into place. And we all know how easy it is to connect the components. So my last chart here is just a methodology of all the different elements that a developer will consider. Not all of them, there are some of them, but maybe most of them, that you want to dive deeply into and really understand and compare one supply chain against another before you make your decision about who you're going to go with. It's an analytical process, but the answers are out there, and please commit to the time and the resources to get those answers. Please don't give up. That's the message that I'm going to give to developers. you've got to be willing to take the extra time to learn and to go through the code approval process in order to get to the other side. Because I promise you, it's going to be worth it to get to the other side. And we're all going to, we're all going to look back 10 years from now. New era. In fact, we are on the verge of an evolution. Just like steel started it in the late 1800s and concrete in the early 1900s, the evolution has happened. Here in Portland, we're learning all about it. And get on board, because it's not going away. Thank you very much.